Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Pradeep Prabhuji, whenever you're ready, you can start, Prabhuji.
Sure, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Today we are reading Canto 4, Chapter 23, Maharaj Prutu going back home from verse 14 to 26. Verse 14. When Maharaj Prutu practiced a particular yogic sitting posture, he blocked the door of his anus with his ankles, pressed his right and left calves, and gradually raised his life hair upward, passing it on through the circle of his navel, up to his heart and throat, finally pushed it upward to the central position between his two eyebrows. Text 15. In this way, Maharaj Prudu gradually raised his air of life up to the hole in his skull, whereupon he lost all desire for material existence. Gradually, he merged his air of life with the totality of air, his body with the totality of earth, and the fire within the body with the totality of fire. Text 16. In this way, according to the different positions of various parts of the body, Prudu Maharaj merged the wholes of his senses with sky, his bodily liquids such as blood and various secretions with the totality of water, and he merged earth with water, then water with fire, fire with air, air with sky, and so on. Text 17. He amalgamated the mind with the senses and the senses with the sense objects according to their respective positions, and he also amalgamated the material ego with the total material energy, Mahat Tattva. Text 18. Prudu Maharaj then offered the total designation of the living entity upon the supreme controller of illusionary energy. Being released from all the designations by which the living entity became trapped, he became free by knowledge and renunciation, and by the spiritual force of his devotional service. In this way, being situated in the original constitutional position of Krishna consciousness, he gave up his body or controller as a Prabhu or controller of the senses. Text 19. The queen, the wife of Prudu Maharaj, who named as Archi, followed her husband into the forest. Since she was a queen, her body was very delicate. Although she did not deserve to live in forest, she voluntarily touched her lotus feet to the ground. Text 20. Although she was not accustomed to such difficulties, Queen Archie followed her husband in the regulative principles of living in the forest like great sages. She lay down on the ground and ate only fruits, flowers, and leaves, and because she was not fit for these activities, she became frail and thin. Yet, because of the pleasure she derived in serving her husband, she did not feel any difficulties. Text 21. When Queen Archie saw that her husband, who had been so merciful to her, and the earth no longer showed symptoms of life, she lamented for a little while and then built a fiery pyre on top of a hill and placed the body of her husband on it. Text 22. After this, the queen executed the necessary funerary functions and offered oblations of water. After bathing in the river, she offered obeisances to various demigods situated in the sky and in the different planetary systems. She then circumambulated the fire and while thinking of the lotus feet of her husband, entered in its flames. Text 23. After observing this brave act performed by the chaste wife Archi, the wife of the great king Prudu, many thousands of wives of demigods, along with their husbands, offered prayers to the queen, for for they were very much satisfied. Text 24. After that, the demigods were situated on top of the Mandara hill, and all their wives began to shower flowers on the funeral prayer on and began to talk about themselves as follows. Text 25. The wives of the demigod said, all glories to Queen Archi. We can see that this queen of the great King Prudu, the emperor of all the kings of the world, has served her husband with mind, speech, and body exactly as the goddess of the fortune serves the supreme personality of Godhead, Yagnesha or Vishnu. Text 26. The wives of the demigods continued, just see how this chaste lady Archi, by dint of her inconceivable pious activities, is still following her husband upward as far as we can see. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Yeah, when you're ready, you can start, Krishna and Prabhuji.
Thank you, Sundaranda Prabhu, for giving this opportunity. Thank you all for joining today's Srimad Bhagavatam session. And thank you, Pradeep Prabhuji, for readings translation of today's Bhagavatam section. We'll start with prayers. Om Ajnatimirandasya Jnananjanasalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishnapreshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pachatta Veshatarni. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktarunda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23, titled Maharaj Prutu's Going Back Home. So just to give a background, we are in the section of Prutu Maharaj's pastimes. So in the last chapter we heard, while Maharaj Prutu was giving instruction to all his citizens to follow the duties of Varnashrama Dharma and keep Krishna in the center of all activities, make their human life successful. So at that time, we see that the great saintly personalities, 4 Kumaras, appear, and Prutu Maharaj showed through his own personal example how to receive these great saintly people. Like he offered a seat, worshipped them, washed their lotus feet like that. And then Prutu Maharaj requested 4 Kumaras to enlighten with their spiritual knowledge. So he asked how a person can be delivered who is addicted to sense gratification in this life because of past life reactions. Then we heard how Sanat Kumar enlightened or gave the spiritual knowledge to Prutu Maharaj. Through Prutu Maharaj, so all the general people are benefited by this question. So Sanat Kumar gave several things like, to have the unflinching faith on the Supreme Lord, so which will cleanse all our material desires. And he also mentions to be detached from the bodily concept of life and increase the attachment to Krishna, which can be done through the process of Bhakti Yoga, specifically with the hearing and chanting process. And then he also mentioned few other things to take association of the devotees, not to associate with the materialistic people, develop all good qualities, do not be stuck with artha and kama, because that will bring only destruction. Like that, he gave several wonderful instructions enlightened with the spiritual knowledge. Then Prithu Maharaj glorified the four Kumaras. Then we hear four Kumaras left the palace. And then Prithu Maharaj ruled the kingdom with the instructions that were given by the four Kumaras. In the last section of this chapter, we heard from Grace Achutaradhika Mataji very nicely summarized how Prithu Maharaj ruled the kingdom very nicely, and then he saw that himself that he's getting old. Then he retired from the family life and went to the forest to perform the severe bhakti yoga process, tapasya. And we heard what kind of severe austerity that he performed. Like he ate only fruits for some time, then moved to the trunks and roots of trees, then only lived on the water, and finally he just lived on the breathing the air like that. So, and then there are several austerities that he took, and then he controlled his mind and senses through this process of Ashtanga Yoga process. And then he meditated on Krishna. So when it's time to give up the body, that's what in the last sloka we see, that when it's time to give up his body, so he fixed his mind on the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Krishna. That way he's situated in the Brahmabhuta platform, and then he gave up his body. So in the next couple of slokas, we see the process of what process that he went through to give up the body. So in the 14th sloka, we hear that Prithu Maharaj practiced a particular yogic sitting posture. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that this particular yogic sitting posture is called as Muktasana. So we understand that in the Ashtanga Yoga process, there are 8 limbs, Ashtanga, 8 limbs. And one of them is asana, like Yama, Nima, Asana, Pranamaya, like that there are 8 limbs. And one of them is asana. And in this particular sitting posture, this asana is called Muktasana. And Prabhupada mentions that the ultimate aim of this Ashtanga Yoga process is to enable oneself to give up the body according to his own free will. So when one becomes perfect in this yoga process, they can live in this material body how long they want it, or they can live in this body until they become perfect. So when they are perfected, then they leave the body, and then they will reach to the destination wherever they want. And Prabhupada mentions that some yogis, they want to go to the higher planet system in this material world, in this universe, so that they can have better facilities and they can enjoy more and more. But intelligent yogi, so they will target themselves to go back home, back to God, spiritual world. Because they understand that wherever we go in this material world, one has to go through the repeated birth and death. Like Brahma Bhuvana Loka Punaravuttino Arjuna, like they have to go through the repeated birth and death, which is the miserable place. So that's why an intelligent yogi will go target to go back home, back to Godhead. And Prabhupada mentions the process of this Ashtanga Yoga, leaving the body, like, so they will block the door of his anus with his ankles and then gradually raise the life air upward. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that so the yogi, they will uplift the air and then they will go through the different chakras we have in the body. Like there are 7 chakras. So starting with Mooladhara chakra. So the yogi, through this process, they will raise the life air from the Mooladhara chakra and up to the Swadhisthana chakra, like that, one chakra by one chakra, like that. And they will reach to the final chakra, which is called Agnya chakra, which is the between the 2 eyebrows. So this is where the final chakra. So then what does the yogi does? They will make a hole on top of his head, the skull, and then they will penetrate through this hole, which is called Brahmaranda. And then they will go to any planet, whichever the planet they want to, or up to the Vaikuntha Loka. Of course, this Ashtanga Yoga is not recommended in this Kali Yuga, because the people of Kali Yuga are not capable to do this. It's very difficult to practice. We see that, in the Ashtanga Yoga process, one has to sit in particular asana for a longer period of time, sometimes years and years. And in the people of Kali Yuga, so we don't have the ability to sit even for an hour straight in the simple asana. So that's why this Ashtanga Yoga process is not recommended. Of course, Krishna is very merciful. He gave this a simple process of chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and make our human life successful. And we get the same result. We can go back home, back to Godhead. That's why Prabhupada mentions that the devotees need not to be concerned. They don't need to be concerned that they don't know this process of Ashtanga Yoga and they were not able to practice because of the abilities, that we don't have that ability. So instead, Prabhupada mentioned that because for the people of Kali Yuga, this simple chanting process is given. Just practice that and then go back home, back to God. And this is the great benefit that is available for the people of Kali Yuga. So if we can take advantage of this, then we can also get the same result and make our human life successful. And then we see in the next sloka that Prithu Maharaj raised his life hair up to the hole in his skull, where he lost the desire for material existence. Then he merged his air of life with the totality of air and the totality of earth, and then fire, like that. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that when the pure spirit soul, when it came from the spiritual world to the material world, then it is covered by the two bodies. So what are those two bodies? Like grass body and subtle body. And the grass body is made of these 5 material elements, like earth, water, fire, and then ether, like that. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So, and then the subtle body is made of 3 elements: mind, intelligence, and false ego. And when one is leaving the body, of course, these are the elements that are required to be created in this material cosmic creation. So when one is leaving the body, so they will merge all this, the Ashtanga Yoga process, the yogi, when one is successful, they will merge all this with the totality of the material elements. And Prabhupada mentions that even Lord Buddha also, his teachings of Nirvana is the process that he has given, that yoga process is to basically get rid of these 2 bodies, the gross body and subtle body. Of course, Buddha did not went further and did not disclose much information about the pure spirit soul or the Vaikuntha Lokas information, like that. So because of that, Prabhupada mentions that there is a greater chance they can fall down. They may go up to the Brahma Jyoti, but because there is no reciprocation or there is no service, so there is a possibility that they will fall down. There is no complete Ananda there. And in the next sloka, we hear Prithu Maharaj is according to the different positions of various parts of body, Prithu Maharaj merged his senses with sky and bodily liquids with the water, and he merged earth into the water and water with fire, like that. So as we mentioned, like this is mentioned in the second canto, like how these material elements created, like in the 5 elements, the Panchabhutas, first is the sky, and from the sky air comes, from the air fire comes, and from the fire water comes, and from the water earth comes. And when the material creation is winded up, so it is reverse order. So the earth will be merged into the water, and water will be merged into the fire, and fire will be merged into the air, and air will be merged into the sky, like that, in the reverse order. So the same process for the individual material body creation also. So that's what here we see that Prithu Maharaj, so he merged the water, earth with water, so the reverse order, and water with fire, and fire with air, and air with sky. So in the reverse order. When the creation happens, it starts from sky, but when the annihilation happens, it ends with sky, like that. And then the 17th sloka, we see that the other objects like the mind and the senses. So he merged the mind with the senses and senses with the sense objects. And according to the respective positions, he also merged the material ego with the material energy, which is Mahatattva. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that this material mind it is merged with the senses, and the senses with the sense objects, which are smell, taste, form, and then sound, like that. And Prabhupada mentions that the sound is the ultimate source for the sense objects. So that's why sound is very powerful. Like, if it is a material sound, it will bind us into this material world, and it will force us to go through the Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. But the same sound, if we engage it in the spirituality, the spiritual sound vibrations, then it will cleanse all our material desires. So Cheto Darpana Majjana. So it will cleanse all our heart. What kind of sound vibration? Sri Krishna Sankirtana. So they're chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That's what Prabhupada mentions in the purport, that if we want to be freed from all material contamination, just chant this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And then in the next sloka we hear that, Prithu Maharaj then offered the total designation of the living entity to the supreme control of illusion energy. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that so Krishna is the source of all energies, including this material energy. In Bhagavad Gita also we hear Mayadhyakshana Prakritya Suyate Sachara Acharam, like that. He is the controller of the material energy. So when the spirit soul, pure spirit soul, when it comes into this material world, so it is entrapped by this material energy. So then they go through the different bodies, material bodies, to fulfill their desires. But when here we see that Prithu Maharaj, by performing this spiritual process, he became free from the knowledge and renunciation by the spiritual force of the devotion service. So in this way, he is situated in the original position of Krishna consciousness, understanding that I am the pure spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, eternally a servant of Krishna, and act on that understanding. That is the important. And then he gave up this body as Prabhu, control of the sense. So through this process, Prithu Maharaj was able to control his senses, mind and senses. So that's why he became as a Prabhu. So he's no longer controlled by the material energy. So that's how he gave up his body. And the next coming slokas, we hear the exalted nature or behavior of Prithu Maharaj's wife, Archi. And here we see that the queen, the wife of Prithu Maharaj, whose name is Archi, followed her husband into the forest. And then here we said she was queen, body was very delicate. Although she did not deserve to live in the forest, she voluntarily touched her lotus feet to the ground. And we hear in the past chapters that when the body of the King Venu was churned by the sages, we heard that two great personalities appeared. So one is Prithu Maharaj, who is the Shaktavaisha avatar of Supreme Lord Krishna, and also Mother Archi. So she is the partial incarnation of Goddess Fortune. Then we heard that Mother Archi accepted Prithu Maharaj as her husband. And we see that Mother Archi is the wife of Prithu Maharaj, and she is a queen, very delicate. And generally the queens, they don't come out from the palace. But here, because Prithu Maharaj retired from the family life and went to forest, so Mother Archi also followed her husband, and she also entered into the forest. So Prabhupada mentions that Mother Achi, when Prithu Maharaj is ruling the kingdom as a king, so she also sat on the throne along with Prithu Maharaj. But when Prithu Maharaj went to the forest to perform the tapasya, she followed to the forest as a chaste wife. And we hear from Ramayana also, the example, Mother Sita. So when Lord Ramachandra was ordered to go to forest, even though Mother Sita was not ordered to go to forest, but nonetheless she took voluntarily and went along with the Lord Ramachandra. And she mentions that wherever Lord Ramachandra is there, that is heaven for her. So, and she will be very happy to serve wherever Lord Ramachandra is there. And if Lord Ramachandra is not there, then that is a very unhappy situation for her. Even though it is she is living in an opulent kingdom like that. So through all these queens, they are giving, they're instructing the general people, showing through their personal example how to become a chaste wife and how to follow the great husband in every stage of life. And in the text 20, we hear that Mother Achi, although she was not accustomed to such difficulties, she following her husband in regulative principles, living in the forest like great sages. So we see how the Mother Achi also went to the austerity, like laying down on the ground and eating only fruits, flowers, leaves like that. Due to that, she became frail and thin. But she is deriving great pleasure by serving her husband, and she did not feel any difficulties. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that this is the Vedic civilization training. Like in the Vedic civilization, a man is trained to go through the brahmachari life, and then ideal grostha life, then vanaprastha, sannyasi like that. And the girl is trained, the wife is trained to follow her husband in every stage of life. When the husband retires from family life and go to forest to perform tapasya, the wife also follows because it's a vanaprastha stage. And at that time, the wife serves the husband as she served when they are in the grostha life, similar like that. And when the husband takes the sannyasi order, then the wife returns to home and leads the saintly life, showing an example to their daughters and daughter-in-laws like that, so that they can also do the same thing in the future. And and then by following this, we see that the Mother Achi became frail and thin, but still she derived a great pleasure. So by following this chastity life, even the woman will acquire great powers also. And in the text 21, we see that when Achi saw that her husband, Prithu Maharaj, who is so merciful to her on earth, so no longer showed symptoms of life. Because she lamented for a while and then prepared the funeral fire. Because Mother Achi is the incarnation of the goddess Fortune. So she understand that her husband left the body, but still she lamented for a while. And then as she has this Vedic knowledge, understanding that Prithu Maharaj went back home, back to Godhead. So she started preparing the final rites. In the text 22, we see that the Mother Achi queen executed the necessary funeral functions and offered oblations of water. And then after bathing in the river, she offered obeisances to various demigods. And then she circumambulated the fire, and thinking of the lotus feet of her husband, she also entered into that. So Prabhupada mentions this is called Sahagamana. So the wife voluntarily enters into the funeral fire of her husband, and she also leaves the body along with her husband. Of course, it is totally voluntary, and this was followed in the earlier yugas, even I think in the beginning of the Kali Yuga, but it is voluntary. Like we hear in the case of Pandu Maharaj also, right? When Pandu Maharaj left the body, his wife Madri, she voluntarily entered into the fire, funeral fire of her husband. But the other wife, Mother Kunti, she was asked to stay back to take care of small children. But of course, as Kali Yuga progressed, this became a forcing approach. Like when the wife doesn't have enough courage or strength to enter into the funeral fire of her husband, but the relatives were forcing to enter into the fire. That's why the government stopped this one. They brought a law not to enter into the funeral fire of her husband. So the Vedic literature mentions that if one is not strong enough to enter into the funeral fire of her husband, they can stay back but lead a austere life. It's mentioned that they have to shave their head, not wearing any ornaments or colorful saris, but only wear the white saris, like that. So because the reason is when one loses her husband and staying a single woman, so there are some sinful men who looks for an opportunity to exploit this single woman. So that's why when they lead this austerity life, this gives an indication to those people that so she is not interested in any other woman. Otherwise, some sect of the sinful men, they will try to pollute this single woman. So which would bring the or cause of the birth of Varna Sangha. So this is what even Arjuna mentions in Bhagavad Gita. When the women are, many men are died in the war, and woman becomes polluted, then there is a unwanted children comes out, Varna Sangha. But of course, if someone wants to get married, then they can have marriage, but not to have any illegal relationship like that. So then in the text 23, we see that by observing this brave act, so even the wives of the demigods who are in the higher planet systems, so they were very much satisfied, and they offered prayers to the Queen Achi. And we see that at that time, so where are these demigods, the wives of the demigods? They are on the top of the Mandara hill, so in the higher planet systems. And then they started talking among themselves. So in the text 25, you see that the demigods, the wives of the demigods are saying that all glories to Queen Achi. So we can see that this queen of King Prithu, the emperor of all kings, she served her husband with mind, speech, and body exactly as the goddess of fortune serves. So Mother Achi served her husband exactly how goddess of fortune serves the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada mentions that goddess of fortune, though she has many servants, but she personally serves her husband, Lord Vishnu. Like it's similar to Mother Rukmini, 5,000 years back when Krishna appeared, right? And Rukmini also, she used to serve Lord Krishna personally, even though she has many servants. So similarly, Mother Achi also served her husband, King Prithu, similar to the goddess of fortune, serving the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So this is how the both husband and wife should lead a life, so that they both can progress spiritually. Like the husband will be very chaste to Supreme Lord Krishna, and the wife will be very chaste to husband. So both will go back home, back to Godhead. And in the text 26, so the last sloka of today, so we see that the demigods' wives, they continued speaking, saying that how this chaste lady, Archi, by dint of her inconceivable pious activities, following her husband as far as we can see. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that these ladies who are speaking are from the higher planet systems, like the Swargaloka, moon planet, sun planet, like that. And so these ladies, they can able to see downward and upward. So when they look at the downward, they see that the Pruthumara's body is burning in the funeral fire, and Mother Achi is entering into the funeral fire, like that they were able to see. And at the same time, when they see the upwards, they see that both Pruthumaras and Madarachi, they were carried in 2 aeroplanes to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha planet. And they understand that this is possible only through inconceivable pious activities. Because we understand that Prithumara's is a pure devotee, and Madarachi, simply by following her husband, so she also performed the pure devotion service. So both of them went back home, back to Godhead. So this is the ideal husband and wife leading the life. So that way both can go back home, back to Godhead. So I'll pause it here, and so in the next session we can see the further discussions of these wives of the demigods, and also we hear the benefit of hearing Prithumara's pastimes like that. So I'll stop it here. Thank you all for giving this opportunity. Grandara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you so much, Krishna Prabhuji. Wonderful class, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare